It was a chilly Tuesday morning when Ethan Cole, a powerful real estate tycoon known for his perfectionism, noticed something odd. For the first time in over 3 years, his maid, Grace Miller, hadn't shown up. Grace was never late, not once. Every morning, she arrived at exactly 7:30, wearing her simple blue uniform and that quiet, gentle smile that made the massive, lonely mansion feel a little more like home. At first, Ethan brushed it off. Maybe she caught a cold, he thought. But as the hours passed and his calls went unanswered, unease began to creep in. Grace wasn't just an employee. She was part of the rhythm of his home, a calm, dependable presence in an otherwise empty life. Yet, despite years of working for him, Ethan realized he knew nothing about her. Not where she lived. Not what her life was like outside those tall marble walls. By noon, the silence became unbearable. He grabbed his car keys and, for the first time in years, decided to drive himself. Typing her address into the GPS, he found himself heading to a part of the city he had never set foot in. As he drove, the scenery changed. The glittering skyscrapers gave way to cracked sidewalks and faded paint. Children played barefoot on dusty streets. For a man who owned half the skyline, it was like entering a world he'd long forgotten existed. When he finally reached Grace's address, a small, time-worn house at the end of a narrow lane, he hesitated. The paint was peeling, and one of the windows was covered with an old bedsheet instead of curtains. He knocked softly. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing Grace, pale, startled, and holding a crying baby. "Mr. Cole," she whispered, her eyes widening. "You didn't come to work." "I just wanted to make sure you're okay," he said gently. Grace looked down, her lips trembling. "I'm so sorry, sir. I meant to call, but things have been difficult." Ethan glanced past her, and his chest tightened. Inside, the home was dimly lit and nearly empty. A few old chairs, a cracked table, a baby's crib fashioned from mismatched wood. In the corner sat a little girl, no older than 8, holding a threadbare doll. Her big brown eyes met his, curious, cautious. "Please come in," Grace said quietly. The floorboards creaked under his polished shoes. The air smelled faintly of thin soup simmering on a small stove. He noticed the walls were cracked, the heater barely working. "I didn't know you had children," he said softly. Grace nodded, rocking the baby in her arms. "I never mentioned them. I didn't want to lose my job. Employers don't usually hire single mothers, especially not with a newborn." Her words hit him harder than he expected. "Lose your job?" he murmured. "Grace, I would never." "I know," she interrupted gently, "but I couldn't risk it. Not after everything I've already lost." Ethan noticed a framed photo on the shelf, Grace beside a man in a soldier's uniform. "Your husband?" She nodded, her eyes glistening. "He passed away 2 years ago. Since then, it's just been me and the kids." The little girl slowly approached, holding her doll tightly. "Mama says you're a good man," she said shyly. "Thank you for letting her work for you." Ethan froze. A lump formed in his throat. A good man. He had been called many things: successful, ruthless, unstoppable, but never good. He looked around the small house again. The empty fridge, the fading wallpaper, the quiet strength in Grace's eyes as she comforted her crying baby. "Why didn't you ever ask for help?" he whispered. "I don't want pity, sir," she said softly. "I just want to earn an honest living. That's enough for me." Her humility broke something open inside him. He turned to her and said, "You shouldn't have to live like this. You've given your best for years without ever asking for anything. Let me do something for you, not out of charity, but out of respect." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes. I don't know what to say." "Just say yes," he replied quietly, and she did, with a trembling nod. That afternoon, Ethan made calls. Within hours, groceries, new furniture, and warm blankets arrived at Grace's door. Her daughter's face lit up as she hugged a brand new doll. "Now my doll has a friend," she giggled. As Ethan drove home that evening, the sight of his mansion, gleaming and silent, no longer filled him with pride. For the first time, it felt cold, empty. He sat in his grand living room, staring out at the city lights, and realized how blind he had been. He spent his life building towers of glass and stone, yet never looked into the hearts of those who made it possible. That night, he made a decision. He would start a foundation for single parents, giving them housing, childcare, and support, not as charity, but as a promise to honor their dignity. And somewhere across the city, in a small house now filled with warmth and laughter, Grace whispered a prayer of gratitude, not for the gifts she received, but for the compassion she had awakened in another human soul.